are at Laurent Perrier, and I am here with Michelle DeFeo. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming.
So today we're going to be talking about different types of champagne, because obviously there's a lot of talk about sparkling wine versus champagne and the different kind of bubbles, but within the category of champagne, there's actually a lot of differences as well.
The word champagne we have been using for so long to just be synonymous with a wine that has bubbles in it. But the reality is that champagne is a place, and any wine that's made in a certain way within that region has the right to be called champagne. So among all of the wines that are made in that region that are allowed to bear that designation, there's a vast selection of the types of wines that can be made there. You know, to use an analogy for Napa, let's say, if we were to just say, oh, it's a Napa wine. Well, that can be anything. It can be red, it can be white, it can be sparkling. And in the same way that we say champagne, because that's a place just like Napa, there's a wide variety of wines that are available there as well.
And I think for a lot of people, they assume that the differences come from different brands, from different champagne houses, but there's actually different types of champagne that you can look for. So tell me a little bit about the categorizations of champagne.
Sure, so every brand certainly has its own style, its own house style, we would call it. And then there are different types of champagnes that can be made in the same way that, you know, again, with if we look at grapes, right? So there are 3 grapes that are the main varieties grown in Champagne. And those varietals are Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. When we look at the finished result in that bottle, once we've blended the grapes, once we've decided what color it's going to be, we also have the opportunity in Champagne to blend it from a number of different years. So we make that decision, and then even beyond that, we decide how sweet is it going to be at the end of this entire process. Making a champagne can take at a minimum, from the time the grape is crushed, about 18 months. At a maximum, it can be over 10 years, even beyond that.
And so when someone is looking at a bottle of champagne, you know, if they're looking to have differentiations, let's even start with sweetness. You know, what are the words that people can kind of look at as like the buzzwords?
Sure. So any wine label can be intimidating, right? And in champagne, unfortunately, it's no different.
It's even more intimidating.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we start though with so you'll see champagne on the label, and that's a good thing. That means it's the real stuff. It's from Champagne. If it says Champagne in France, then you know you've got the good stuff. The next thing that you can look for is somewhere on there it'll say rosé if it's going to be pink. So the other thing that you want to look for is the designation, which legally has to be on the label, of the sweetness level. Within the US market, what you'll almost always see on the label is either going to be Brut Nature, Extra Brut, Brut, or Demi-Sec. And within those sweetness categories, going from a drier to a sweeter style, you'll find a champagne that has no sugar added to it whatsoever, up to one that has almost 50 grams of sugar per liter added to it on the sweet demi-sec side. And what that means is that, you know, when you say 50 grams of sugar, you think, wow, is it going to be syrupy? Is it going to be, you know, like a, you know, is it going to be like soda? No, it's nowhere near that. It's actually less sugar than you'll have in a latte. The vast majority of all champagnes that are sold in the US are the Brut category. So when you find something like a Brut Nature or an Extra Brut, which are the very, very dry categories, that's something that's actually the strongest segment, the fastest growing segment of champagnes in the United States. And what's kind of neat about that is that because there's no sugar added to it whatsoever, you really kind of get this purest expression of champagne soils. There's no adulteration there whatsoever. When we talk about sugar levels, when we talk about sweetness, it's important to remember how champagne is made. We press the grapes. The first thing we do is we make a still wine, which means pick the grapes, press the grapes. Yeast, which is present on the grape skins, eats the sugar that's present inside the grapes. That equals alcohol and carbon dioxide. When you make a still wine, all you do is let that carbon dioxide just escape into the environment. Same way we make any wine. And then with champagne, we take that still wine and then we put it into the bottle, and it legally has to be the bottle in which it will ultimately be sold in Champagne. And then we add a sugar and yeast mixture. And it's just, when I say sugar, it's regular sugar. It's, you know, either beet sugar or cane sugar. And a mixture of this sugar and yeast is added to the bottle. And now you've got more yeast and more sugar. So the yeast eats the sugar, equals alcohol, carbon dioxide. But this time, we put a crown cap on the top of the bottle and we lay it down for a minimum of 15 months. We let that yeast eat that sugar, and all that carbon dioxide that it's creating is forced to dissolve into solution. And that's how champagne gets its bubble. After we do that, we clarify the wine through a process called riddling. And then when we do that, there's a little bit of room left in the neck of every bottle. And then we top off that bottle with another solution of sugar and wine. And it's in that final addition where we define how sweet that champagne is going to be when it's finally consumed. So in the instance of the 3 Brut champagnes, You're looking at roughly in the neighborhood of about 12 grams of sugar per liter, the equivalent when we put in that little thing at the end called the dosage. And that's what will give it its resulting sugar. With the demi-sec, we actually add 32 grams. But with our Ultra Brut, we are allowed to add up to 3 grams of sugar during those 2 points in the process that I mentioned. Laurent Perrier Ultra Brut belongs to the Brut Nature category, which even though we can add those up to 3 grams, we believe that we want to add nothing. We only make the champagne where we have enough naturally occurring sugar in the grapes that will take the place of having to add any additional sugar. So this is literally the driest champagne you can buy. What you're getting is a wine that is on like a leaner side. There is no right and wrong answer.
Right.
It's always about just trying it and seeing what you like.
Right. The main point is just enjoying more champagne.
Absolutely, absolutely, on its own or with food, for sure.
Wonderful.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much for helping us differentiate the different categories within champagne. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.